All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to day two of Analyze Your Trade number 216. So this is the new live charting format. And um, just a reminder, of course, all of these sessions are for educational purposes only. Trading is not suitable for all people. And please consult a financial advisor and only trade with money you can afford to lose. All of these sessions are being recorded individually, and they will be available on TimingResearch.com. Also, if you search for Timing Research on YouTube, Substack, or your favorite podcast app, you can find them there as well. So today we have Peter Schultz of Wealth Builder Publishing to open the day for us. So, Peter, welcome.
Thank you very much, David. I appreciate an opportunity to be on today.
So we have several symbols in the chat already. Um, APPS is the first one.
And on all of these, I'm going to assume that it's a daily chart.
Yeah, if they mention a time frame, I'll tell you. But otherwise, just whatever
So I probably entered it wrong.
whatever
I've
you
got
think.
AAPS. What did you tell me?
APPS.
There we go.
I'm not familiar with that one either, but
Oh my
okay,
goodness, look
that's
at
fine.
this. I, I love these kind of charts. So just to let everyone know, we when we look at charts, a lot of it has to do with the asset that we're trading and or not the asset, but the vehicle. Whether you're trading futures, options, whatever it is, or the stock itself, and then also the time frame. So that all makes a difference. So, and on the analyst, and you just want my take on this chart.
Yeah, just whatever you see, however you look at charts,
Okay, so
whatever
this
you
is,
want to share with the audience.
yeah, this is an obvious breakout, and so the technical indicators I use are the Bollinger Bands, and and the reason for that is it gives us a relative idea of what's overbought and oversold. And so what you'll see here, most of the time with Bollinger Bands, you just see the mean, which is the center line, the blue line that you see here. And then the red line is two standard deviations, and that contains about 90% of a stock's movement typically. And then the magenta, the purple band, that far outside band, is three standard deviations. Now, here's what's interesting about three standard deviations is a stock virtually never hits three standard deviations without a fairly quick retracement. And so this is one of those deals. And then also, and just so you know my technical setup, the next indicator I use is the MACD, which is the moving average convergence divergence. And I won't get into the technicalities or how those are defined, but I find the Bollinger Bands give us a relative idea of overbought and oversold. The MACD gives us the turning points. And a lot of the time, what I'll use for the turning points is the histogram down here. So the red you see and the green. And then the bottom one is the on balance volume, because the stock market is a voting machine. And if you have an overwhelming number of votes for a certain candidate, if they get 97% of the vote, it's a lot different than somebody getting 51% of the vote. So on balance volume tells us if there's a lot of volume in this particular move. So on this particular stock, we have a breakout. The breakout definitely looks like it's going to go higher. You can chase this breakout if you want. The problem with these kinds of breakouts is you never know when they're going to turn. And most of the time when they turn, a lot of the time the retracement is just as steep as the initial up move. So this is the kind of thing where, just to draw a line here, we love to draw lines in technical analysis. So you go, just from what we can see here, if you have just a very simple resistance line here, and you see that the stock broke this, so you know it's in a breakout. The problem is trying to chase it at this point. So if you suspect a stock's going to break out, if you've been following this one, if you really like the stock, the thing to do is to pick your breakout point where you know it's a breakout and put an automatic buy-in order in there, because by the time we react, by the time we see it, it's often too late to really get into it. Although this thing has been going up now for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Pretty impressive. Probably due for a reversal pretty quickly. And that's not to say it won't eventually go higher. What's your next one, David?
All right. Do you do futures too, or just stocks?
I just do stocks. And just to let
Okay.
the people that are listening know right now, I'm an options trader. And breakouts like this are fantastic if you happen to buy call options. And I'm primarily a spread seller. So I sell spreads in the opposite position that the underlying is going, taking advantage of both volatility collapse and time decay and directional moves. So you get a
Okay.
lot going in your favor.
Someone asked for NQ, but you could do QQQ.
Yeah, yeah.
And they
That's
said
that's the ETF for it.
yeah, 4 hour time frame is what they wanted to see specifically. If you,
Well, let's just take a look at that 4 hour. Okay. So this is what I'm seeing here. Okay, so the Bollinger Bands tell us that this thing is actually pretty neutral. It's not overbought or oversold. When you have a narrowing of the Bollinger Bands like this, it usually means that you're going to see a big break in one direction or the other. The general overall direction, if we look at this entire chart, you'll see that the general direction is up. What we see here, though, in terms of patterns, is we're seeing a series of lower highs here. Now, you could argue that this is in the context of also some rising higher lows. So we really have a wedge. And so this is one of those situations, whenever you have a sideways wedge like this, it's usually going to resolve, and the Bollinger Bands are telling us the same thing. It's going to resolve dramatically one way or the other. If we move down here to the MACD, we see it's pretty darn neutral. It's still in the positive, but it's pretty neutral. And the on balance volume, this is where we're getting some divergence. You can see the on balance volume is actually heading lower. That's a concern. And so right now, this is a very neutral chart just based on the technical indicators. If I was to guess, and I'm not a perma bear, but if I was just to guess based on what we're seeing in the CPI, some of the things going on with inflation, I would say this chart probably resolves itself to the downside. What do you have next, David?
all right, sounds good. Um, ASPN.
ASPN.
Hmm.
Okay. And I'm going to assume, I'm always going to assume it's a daily unless somebody tells me otherwise.
Yeah.
So this is interesting. What I'm seeing here, obviously, we have this big downtrend here, but what we're seeing is a lessening of the downtrend and what could be some bottoming action here. We're seeing the on balance volume, very low interest in the stock. The volume's gone way down on it. There's signs it might be ticking higher. We see kind of a bottom in the moving average, the convergence divergence, the MACD, and it's coming up. We're actually a little bit already in the green here. Um, I'd say that this thing has a decent chance of starting to head higher. You can actually see that there was an actual bottom formed right here, and it is gradually heading higher. So maybe the selling is pretty much over in this one. What's
All right.
next?
Next is Yum, YUM, Yum Brands.
Yeah, the makers of all those delicious foods we like to eat. Um, obviously a
Uh,
big breakout here. I like this chart, very bullish. Obviously, in real simple terms, and here's the thing: we use all these technical indicators, but simple charting kind of works the best, and I'll tell you why. The stock market is a voting machine. So just almost everybody can recognize an uptrend, a downtrend, a breakout. And the more people recognize the direction of a stock or what a pattern means, real simple patterns like head and shoulders, that kind of thing, trend breaks, the more people jump on it. And that's why a lot of these patterns tend to be self-fulfilling. So when this thing broke out here, that was a huge buy signal, and it was on really rising on balance volume here. And we have the MACD just going straight up. So although the histogram is already heading lower, as is the stock. So, what I would say is what happens with these, if you're wanting to take a position in it, much of the time, these stocks retrace to previous support. You've got also some support back here, or a little bit higher. And so I would look for this stock to retrace somewhere in this zone right here. And that would give you a really nice entry point, a good chance to get back in the stock, in a stock that is probably heading higher. Of course, whenever you see a big break like this, you want to go and take a look at the fundamental announcement or piece of news that made that happen, and see if that's going to have a lasting effect. Is it kind of a one-off thing, or is there an indication that earnings and revenue are going to be increasing for this stock over a longer period of time? If you get that confirmation with the fundamentals, looking for a good entry point on a stock like this is a really good idea.
All right,
All right.
sounds good. Next one is CVS Pharmacy or Health Corp.
Righty. Yeah, another really nice breakout. Okay, so today is obviously a down day, right? So the CPI came out this morning. It's higher than what everybody was expecting. Everybody's a little bit already on edge with inflation coming back. The Fed is in no hurry to cut rates. My personal opinion is I think eventually the Fed's going to have to start turning the great big ship around and saying, hey, we might have to raise rates, especially if we see some tariffs have an inflationary effect. So to see in that environment, to see a stock gap up like this is super, super positive. This looks like a great entry point. We've got a little bit of a bottleneck in the Bollinger Bands. It's up. It is at that third standard deviation, which means all that means is we will see some retracement, but it's not necessarily going to be today. This thing could, look at this. We've got the MACD just going positive. We've got on balance volume heading higher. This is a buy right here. This is just a great spot to get in. Usually when you see a gap up like this and a stock go up dramatically, it's not a one-day event. What I've seen most often is you can almost count on 3 days when you see a big break like this, or perhaps 3 time periods. And by the third day, maybe the momentum is starting to run out a little bit. We just took a look at one a couple of minutes ago that had 5 straight days of going up. That's impressive. But at 3 days or so, I'm looking to put in for certainly a trailing stop or something to capture a lot of those gains. But boy, this is a great pick, whoever gave this ticker, because this looks like a great entry point on this stock.
All right, sounds good. Next one is SMR, NuScale Power Corp.
Oh yeah, modular reactors. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, right. Okay.
So we've got descending highs here, but we also have much longer higher lows. So this is another sideways wedge. Once again, this is usually what these are is a big battle between the bears and the bulls. And the closer it gets to the point of this wedge, it's like the compression of a spring. It's like a spring is getting pushed down, 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 and when it explodes big. And if you're looking for some kind of an edge or some kind of a probability or of a likelihood in a sideways wedge like this, what it usually defers to is the overall trend of the stock. As you can see, the overall trend of the stock is to the upside. My goodness, look at this thing. You go back just a year ago, and the stock was $4, between $3 and $4 a share. Now it's up at $25 a share. I would say what you're looking for here is a great entry point on a stock that's liable to break higher. You could take any line on this wedge, anywhere in here, or you could even take this point right here and and put an automatic entry point. If the stock gets there, then you buy shares or you buy calls or whatever your favorite vehicle is for taking advantage of an upside. But I love this chart. It's a coiled spring. When it does break out, it's going to move.
Yeah, it's like a perfect, I don't know, what would you call that? Like a fractal iteration of the three tops there. That's
Yeah,
you-
yeah,
it's
exactly.
rare to
That's
see
that's a
something that,
big word, David. I got to start dipping into your dictionary. But I just call this thing a sideways wedge, and they're
well,
kind of
yeah, I mean the three tops there, like
yeah,
how
they're
perfect
pretty
that
uniform.
they,
You see actually the same thing on the SPX right now.
yeah,
But yeah, this thing is. I think this thing is could be due for a big break higher. We'll see.
yeah. All right. So next up is NVDL. It's Granite Shares 2x long NVIDIA daily ETF.
Oh, what a cool! I didn't even know that existed. NV what?
NVDL.
Somebody's wanting some leverage on a very volatile stock. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. So, if you just want to, if you, so back to simple charting, right? If you just want to connect the lows and find out what's going on, you would have to say that this thing is really flirting with breaking the downside. Um, we got a short-term like crossover higher here. That's great. It didn't make much of a dent, and now it looks like it's heading lower. But I'll tell you what the killer on this thing is, what really tells you that it's bearish. And this is why I use various three different non-correlated indicators, is this on balance volume heading lower. So what I would say is going to happen with NVDL is this is going to retrace to this very critical support line here, and it's going to break it. And I think this is going to go much lower. I could be wrong, but I don't like this top, this latest top being lower than the previous top. Don't like the general downtrend. Um, yeah, I'm thinking, and obviously this is derived from NVIDIA. So as magnificent as everyone thinks NVIDIA is, I think it's going to go lower. And I realize that their earnings are coming out towards the end of this month, and everybody, has these incredibly high expectations for earnings out of NVIDIA. And NVIDIA has been able to knock it out of the park so many quarters. But all of a sudden, a quarter comes along where the whisper numbers just get much higher than the reality, even if the reality is fantastic. And you see a company like NVIDIA, a real all-star, coming out with great earnings, and you see the stock fall off a cliff. And I think that's very much what could happen at their next earnings announcement. They're valued for perfection. Perfection is a wonderful ideal, a little hard to attain in the real world, and so it looks to me like this is headed lower.
All right. Here's something a little more conventional. FCX, Freeport McMoran.
SCX,
Um, FCX.
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 Oh, FCX, yeah.
Um, Freeport McMoran,
And
that's
this is
copper
such a
mostly, I think,
wonderful gold and
or
copper
gold.
stock. They've got the Grasberg mine over in Indonesia. Isn't this absolutely fascinating? So this is obviously, I mean, you don't need me to tell you that there's a problem going on here. And we've gone lower than the previous low. Right now on the mean, the Bollinger Bands aren't telling us much. Slight upturn on the MACD, nothing to write home about. Look at this volume. My goodness. So ever since peaking, the volume's just gone down, 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 very negative. What on balance volume tells you, by the way, is it's the vote of how much negative volume is versus how much positive volume. And obviously there's a lot more negative volume, but all of those indicators are completely unnecessary in this situation. All you need is this great big downline. Now, here's what's interesting to me. is gold has been going higher, 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 and higher. And Freeport McMoran has been going lower, 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 lower. That is really not what you'd expect. And Freeport's been going lower since October. My goodness, what in the heck is going on here? So my suspicion, without delving into it at this moment, is there's something going on with the company itself. They're even either having problems with some of their biggest assets, or something's going on. If that something is temporary in nature, this might make a great longer term play. So that's for the individual investor to figure out. But the trend on this one is unequivocally to the downside.
While we're on this, do you have any thoughts about gold or silver or copper in general?
Yeah, I think gold's gotten a little overbought. See, all this comes down to time frame, right? So, do you think gold's going to go higher or lower? Well, if you said yes to both of those, you'd be right, because pick the time frame, and gold can always retrace a little bit. I think it's gotten, in fact, instead of just talking about it in the abstract, let's just do this. Yeah, so I mean, look at that chart. Now, if that was any other chart, would you say, this one's due for a little bit of retracement? And, I'd say, yeah, it is. I think it's overall bullish? Yeah. I think in an inflationary environment, I think in an era where chances are the value of the dollar is going to be diminished over time. Don't laugh when I say that, because it sounds so darn obvious. I think gold is just a great hedge. Read a super interesting article yesterday about the difference between physical and ETFs, like the GLD. And the guy was a former principal. He had a prominent position with Sprott, one of the biggest commodity experts and traders in the world. And he cited several different instances where they at Sprott, they said, okay, we're going to collect on our contracts now. We want our gold, or we want our silver. And the counterparties just said, I'm sorry, we can't provide that. There's been a problem with the vault, this, that, the other thing. Dragged their feet for 9 months, and finally just came out and said, I'm sorry, we can't supply it. So if you're a real gold bug, you want to stash this stuff, under your bed, or in your safe, or in your safety deposit box, or whatever. I think as a tradable asset, I think gold and silver are interesting, but I think when the what hits the fan, I'm not sure everyone's going to be able to actually provide and produce the physical asset to go along with the enormous amount of digital obligations that are out there for gold and silver and some of the other hard commodities. So in looking at this chart, yeah, great uptrend. I mean, this is a set of railroad tracks here. What I would say is that this on-balance volume is kind of declining here. Volume is looking pretty decent for gold, although it's peaked a little bit. This uptrend could have further to run, but I'd be getting kind of nervous in here about a pullback. Over the long run, you're going to be in great shape with gold. I think it continues to go higher. From a tradability standpoint, it's hugging its second standard deviation. Definitely overbought. We could see a little retracement in here, but it'll probably be short-lived.
All right, sounds good. Here's one that I have not heard of before, but looks interesting. QBTS, D-Wave Quantum Inc. They're a
Oh, I'm
quantum
really, I'm
computer.
kind of into the quantum stocks.
Oh yeah,
I was one of the founders of quantum computing way back in the day. So QB what?
QBTS.
Oh yeah. D-Wave. Oh yeah, they've been in the quantum space for a long time. Look at that. This is just so classic with these stocks. I got to tell you, I'm really into the micro caps and these things. Okay, first of all, without going down too many rabbit holes, all you got to see is this right here. It hasn't really been able to get off the mat. This thing has some more downside to go. This MACD tells you a lot. had a lot of volume. Wouldn't be surprising if the volume started coming down. I see this thing retracing. I think it's going to retrace. I know everybody uses Fibonacci. I'm a little bit more simple than that. I say it retraces to at least that point, could retrace to this point. So I would be judicious about buying more here. I think we've got some more downside. But here's what I'll say about these little stocks, and this is why I like them. So this thing goes along for months and months and months and months, around a dollar 32, gets all the way up here to 250. Not very much money. And then you get up here and it peaks at 1140, somewhere in there. You got another chance to dump some shares above $10. You can make so much money on these stocks. I've got a microcap investing service. That's part of what we do. And what I call these things, I mean, it's just an absolute explosion in value here. And what I call these things is options that never expire, because you can hold them for years. And when the explosion happens, I mean, let me tell you something. Mama's getting a new pair of shoes. It's like it's raining money. Anyway, I'm almost out of time. Maybe we can take one more ticker. You tell me,
Yeah.
David.
Well, yeah, before we run out of time, do you want to tell them about your link?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have several different services. This one is our credit spread selling service against direction, and it's at worryfreeprofits.com. And the reason I call it worry free profits is because kind of everything's, all the probabilities are stacked in your favor. And what I've learned as a trader is, it's good to be smart, it's good to know charts and all of that, but just stack the probabilities in your favor, and you'll just win the majority of the time. So that's everything that we do. We sell credit spreads. You have time decay in your favor. It works out pretty well. We also are heavily into micro caps and nano caps. You can go to Wealth Builder Publishing and check all that out for yourself. But it's been a joy to be with you this morning, and good luck with your trading.